Hello students, in today's class we will be learning about political risk. A political risk is one of the risks which affects the risk and return of securities. Now, in the word itself, it is stated that it is related with politics. So, every uh, country which has got democracy forms a government. To form a government, we need political parties. And what do governments basically do? They design something called as policies. So whatever laws, rules, regulations, whatever we are following are all the source is attributed to the government. So there are a number of political parties, but only one political party or a coalition of several parties basically form a government. So somebody who gets to rule, somebody who governs, who uh, gives us all these laws, rules, and regulations is basically, in one word, we call them as government. They are so important to an economy because frequent changes in the government is not recommended. So, first of all, stability of these governments is needed. So you can't keep on changing, government every 6 months or every 2 months. First of all, conducting elections is a very costly affair. Next thing is these elections must be fair, and the third thing is that one of the political party or a coalition of political parties need to form a government. So these, government comes into picture. Although we say that democracy is for the people and by the people and of the people, it is a very tedious process, costly process, and it requires the trust and appeasement of several individuals. So only then a government basically forms. All these are the challenges we face in a democratic environment. Most of the countries in the world are basically democratic, and in such case we see governments coming, and we look forward to have stable governments. When I say stable governments, minimum for 5 years they need to be there in power, so that the policies they bring are there. Now what happens when we go for another election or a government is toppled and another government comes? All the policies which are framed by the previous government is shuffled, repealed, and new policies are set in place. So we see that the life of policies are totally, totally out of track because of the formation of governments. So we see that policies do not live a longer life. They die very soon because governments keep changing, mainly because of rivalry. All these policies are basically repealed. In some cases, there is no logic behind removing the old policies, but in some cases, outdated policies are removed, and these seems to be logical. So rather than removing the previous government's policies, it is better to update the policies which are there, so that we do not have outdated policies in the system. So this is the role, bigger role that government needs to play. Uh, First thing is stability of the government leads to stability of the policies. So frequent changes in the government might affect these policies. One more factor which is getting affected are the investors. So frequent instability of the government will also change policies. Instability of the government will also see that investors might come to the country or may even leave the country. So in India, for example, we had a socialist form of looking at the economy, and that basically drove all the investors outside the country. Once we shifted from socialism to partly capitalistic society or economy, we see that there is a change. Now investors are interested to come because it's favorable for them. But in a socialist environment, it was not favorable. So this is how political risk basically affects the investors. In our study, we are basically not interested in policies or neither the government, but we are seeing them as factors which affects investment. So how does an investor get affected because of the change in government, change in policies is what we were basically seeing. And most of the time, we say that this instability of the government and policies are rapidly seen or is prevalent in third world countries. So who do we call as third world countries? Now this word is no more there. We only have developed countries, developing countries, and underdeveloped countries. So third world countries are underdeveloped countries, countries whose GDP is low, their earnings or income is low, and they are unable to provide basic educational and health facilities. So for such countries, we call them as third world countries. So when your education, when your health, when your basic amenities are in question, then the question of forming a government comes. Military might take over, or some dons or mafia might take over the government, topple the government, and this leads to utter chaos in the economy. And this is not good for investment climate. So I hope you understood the logic, the rationale behind why we have when we need to have stable governments in the economy. Thank you all.